pulled a pencil from behind her ear and changed the date on the free hardware store calendar to September. It had shocked him, her nonchalance, but he supposed that was the theater life. So here he was, in mid-August, stuck in one of the hottest cities in France, on vacation from his law office, but having to show up on time for a play rehearsal. As he passed by the wedding cake-like rotund fountain, he cursed the 2nd century BC Romans who'd thought it was a fantastic idea to build a city in a spot that was bitterly cold in winter and airless in summer. He cursed whatever writer, celebrity, or cultural influencer had spread the news that Aix was a beautiful place to visit and live, which made it now overcrowded. And he cursed himself and his pride in having won, and shamelessly accepted, as he was very much an amateur, a role in Cigalon. Looking at his watch, he realized he was now 10 minutes late, but he didn't care. It was just too hot. He walked on, across the vast square that was empty except for a kiosk selling flowers. The flowers sat, waiting to find a new home. The pavement below them was wet, as the florist obviously had to water his plants every 20 minutes or so. Waiting to cross the busy Cour Sextius, Jean-Marc frowned at the jaywalkers who ambled across on the red light, even though traffic was still moving. Most of them were much too old to be behaving so dangerously. To distract himself, he tried to imagine his fellow actors. Today was the first time they'd meet each other. He hadn't seen anyone else around before or after his audition. On the audition day, there hadn't been a busy waiting room full of nervous actors rehearsing their lines or doing warm-up exercises. There was only him, sitting on a stool, with Anouk facing him, dropping her book more than once and losing her place on the page, also more than once. He had gone home dejected, drunk a glass of whiskey and smoked a Cuban cigar that Antoine Verlaque had given him, and forgotten all about Anouk and her dingy Théâtre Vendome. But 2 weeks later, he received an email from Anouk announcing, with pleasure, his successful audition for the role of the Count. The contract had been photocopied so many times, it was barely legible. It surprised him that she hadn't specified which edition of the play they were to use, as it was more well known as a film released in 1935. So he had ordered a copy at Goulard on the Cour Mirabeau, and he expected that his fellow actors had done the same. They would all be on the same page, so to speak. The book was in a cloth bag, hanging on his shoulder, along with a pad of paper, a pencil, a water bottle, and his cell phone. He really wasn't sure what else to bring, and he hoped he wasn't over or under prepared. Was he having this so-called imposter syndrome that he'd read about in the papers and in magazines, or was he just a worrywart, as his friend Antoine often accused him of being? It had taken him over 5 minutes to choose the right cloth bag, and he had finally settled on one from the Centre Pompidou. He thought it showed that he was cultured and open to contemporary art and ideas, just in case Anouk wanted to put a modern spin on Cigalon. The pedestrian crossing light turned green, and Jean-Marc walked across the street, his heart pounding as he got closer to the theater. Taking a deep breath, he told himself not to be so foolish. There was no reason to be afraid. He had passed the audition and had every right to be here. He may have been an amateur actor, but he was no slouch in life. He was a successful lawyer with his apartment paid off and a sports car sitting in a rented garage. His furniture had been bought mostly at the Paris auction house Drouot, and he was considering buying a second home in Liguria. His best friend was Aix's well-known, if at times controversial, examining magistrate, who was now happily married to another of Jean-Marc's dearest friends, and they were expecting their first child. They had already asked Jean-Marc to be the godfather. He smiled. Yes, he had auditioned and earned his role, fair and square. His heart rate slowed down, and he was